What's up, everybody? Today we're going to look at what is the state of the Wizards franchise, and we are joined by special guest Craig Hoffman today. So let's get into it next on Locked On Wizards.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Brandon Scott again, and I appreciate you guys making Locked On Wizards your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 and bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And we are joined today by special guest Craig Hoffman. You can catch him every weekday from 4 to 7 p.m. on Team 980 with his Take Command podcast. But we ain't talking about the Commanders today. We are talking about our Washington Wizards. So how you doing today, man?
I'm good, Brandon. Appreciate you having me. Always good. We've been really lucky, as being the radio home of the Wizards, to have so many guests on the Hoffman Show on that 4 to 7 radio spot and get to talk to so many of the people around the team, and excited to talk about them here as well.
Yes, sir. Well, again, man, appreciate you coming on today. Let's get into it. So the first question today is, looking at the Washington Wizards, this was obviously a historically bad season, but looking at individual performances, what players kind of stood out to you this season?
I'm going to start with a weird one, and that's Jordan Poole, because I think Jordan not tanking the entire season and just like his ability to pull himself out of it changes the outlook for the offseason in a major way. So obviously, if we were to say who's the biggest disappointment this season, the answer would be Jordan Poole. But from the way you phrased it, that just it hit me in that way of like who stepped up. Jordan continuing to put in the work and changing his future prospects where people are like, oh, actually, maybe this is a really good NBA basketball player. Maybe this is a guy. And just, there's so much there to talk about with Jordan in terms of like he went through a traumatic experience with the punch and everything, and it was very, very public. And then him having to share a locker room with Draymond for the rest of that season and not really feeling supported by the organization. Like that takes a long time to heal from. And obviously he was playing out of position and all the things that were very wizardy here. But I think he is an odd answer to that question. I mean, I think Denny obviously steps up. There's a couple other guys we can talk about. I don't know if you want me to just list a bunch of dudes or you want to go back and forth on any of these guys, but stepped up the way he showed the maturity to pull through and pull himself out of the funk. I'll say Jordan Poole is my first name, oddly enough.
I'm with you on Jordan Poole, man. And, if you look at the fact that he's a young player, I mean, I was very excited with him coming over from Golden State because you saw what he can do. You saw that he can be a high-level scorer. He can score, it'd be that lightning score off the bench, but then he can start, if need be, taking over for Stephen Curry. And he did a good job. And you say that, he was a key piece of that championship team.
For sure.
Now, obviously, you're looking at the punch and all that. And if you look at some of the issues coming over from DC, like I said, I was very, very, very excited about him coming over. But I think that he needed to kind of acclimate to where he was at. Coming from a perennial contending team like Golden State, where you already had veteran leadership in place with Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, where in DC, along with Kyle Kuzma, you're the guy. So he had to kind of relatively quickly become a leader and really acclimate to who he was in DC. So, I mean, he struggled early on. I mean, he had a Shaq that full moments, but like you said, for a young guy who hasn't even hit his prime yet, to get criticized by every major sports outlet in the country and still turn around and take a L's. You took the 6-man role. You took it. You did his thing. He definitely played at a high performance. And then, when Tyus Jones went down, he came in and he started, and he showed that he very well could be, depending on what the direction is of the team, but could be the starting point guard of the future, in my opinion. So I'm very high on Jordan Poole. I did give him my fair share of smoke early on in the year, but
I mean, he deserved it. And like, I remember having this conversation with someone late in the season, and I had this conversation with folks over there a couple of times during the season. And my whole thing with them was they would tell me how hard Jordan works. I'm like, I hear you, and I don't doubt it. I don't doubt that there is a great kid there. That's everything I heard about him coming out of Golden State. Yeah. The day he got traded, we had our guy Bonte Hill from 95.7 The Game out there who covers the Warriors. He also does their pre and post game on TV. And Bonte's like, you're going to love this kid. He works so hard. Like, I'm really excited that he's going to get a fresh start. And then we watch him play, and we're like, this is the dude that tries really hard? Like, come on. And the question I would ask the people over there is like, what does he see when he watches tape of himself playing defense? Yeah. Because there's no way he watches that and is like, yeah, I'm killing it. And like for him to find the solutions, I think just speaks really well of his competitive character, which is a phrase that I'm really fond of, and I think one that they like a lot with this new group as well. Like it shows me something about who you are to just continue to do it, to grind, and then ultimately for it to come through and be on the court. And it does take a level of like experience and maturity and all those things that I think he's getting closer to doing that on a consistent basis, night in, night out. Obviously, there's a long way to go. And I do think that he's always just going to be limited defensively. And I do think that sometimes I actually had this conversation with Brittany Sykes on Mystics Media Day. I'm like, is defense really just about trying hard? And she's like, well, yeah, there's a huge element to that. But like, obviously, there's a skill and talent element too. And I think Jordan lacks some of the skill and talent elements that's needed to be a great defensive player. But if his give a you-know-what level goes up on that end of the floor, like now we're talking about not just like a useful scoring offensive basketball player, but like a genuinely really good NBA player.
Oh, absolutely. I'm very impressed with Jordan Poole because not a lot of young players could take that many L's and still stay on the grind. You know what I mean? If you look at guys like, I know he's a punch bag for the NBA, but Ben Simmons, where, he got criticized heavily for what? Changing his game for the better for the team and for himself. And, ultimately he couldn't handle the pressure. And obviously, he played in Philly, which is a whole new level of sports town. But Jordan Poole, just the mental side of it. People don't really talk about the mental side of basketball where, where your mind goes, your body follows, and he took a lot of L's, but his body of work, the fact that he took those L's, kept working hard, and you see the potential. I mean, the kid can straight out play some basketball. I mean, he hasn't even hit his prime yet. He's shown that he could be a high level scorer in this league. Now, looking at point guard, can he add the other intangibles to be a point guard, getting other people involved, utilizing more of his vision as opposed to looking to score every time. Those are kind of things I want to see him change. Kind of changed up real quick. Denny Avia, he finally broke out offensively. How comfortable are you going into next season with him being a secondary ball handler?
I think in limited doses. So it's funny because I did a segment on the radio show this year after Denny's 40-point, or actually no, it was a segment right before Denny's 40-point game, where basically I was like, look, Denny's a very good basketball player, but like best case scenario, he's like a fourth or fifth best guy on a championship level team. And then like the next day he scored 40 in every Denny because like the Twitter conversation about him had gotten out of control for me, and I was just like, Denny's really good, but he's getting a lot of shots on a bad team. And like these numbers are inflated and for that reason. And then he dropped 40 and people were like, oh, and then, he comes back, whatever, after the All-Star break and has like the two worst games of his season. And I'm like, see, he's not the 40-point guy. He's also not the 5-point guy. That's kind of the point, is if you put him in the right role, which to me is either a fourth or fifth starter or like a premier sixth man, and you run the offense through him when your stars are not on the floor against reserves, that's a really good option for a winning team, right? Because what are we talking about here? Are we talking about, do we have a guy that could average 20 points a game on a bad team? Sure. Those guys are a dime a dozen in the league, though. Do you have a guy who could average 18 and 8 in the role I just described on a winning team? Those guys are not a dime a dozen. And I think Denny can be that guy. So it's to say, Denny, like, secondary ball handler, if your goal is to win a championship, I want him, down the list. But can I trust him to run some offense? And can I trust him to get the ball off the rim as a rebounder and go? Can I trust him to handle the ball? Yes. I just don't want to overexpose. And I think this is like a really interesting discussion, decision-making. Like I want to put a cap on how many decisions he has to make per game. It's not a low cap, but it's not a superstar level cap either, if that makes sense.
Oh, no, great points, man. And, looking at Denny, obviously, like you said, not a finished product. He's got things to work on. Yeah. Obviously, he needs to work on his left hand, add a mid-range shot to really become that 3-level scorer. Because, this season he's shown that, he attacked the basket more. He learned how to, finish through traffic, finish through contact. The 3-point shot is more fluid. The release is faster. He's less hesitant to take it. He's not a finished product, but, he does have things to work on. But I do see the potential. But I'm with you. Don't put too much on his plate. And really, if you really want to evaluate Denny Avia and how good he can be, what's his role against good teams? How does he play against good teams? And that kind of goes into the next point. Brian Keefe, with him taking over interim head coach, he got a lot out of these guys. So we're gonna talk about him next, man.
Can I make
Brian,
one more
yeah, what's
quick
up?
point on Denny? Let me give a no caveat compliment to Denny.
Yeah,
That dude does not care what you think of him in the best possible way. And the
yeah,
fact, and I would say this about Jordan too, right? The fact, and this plays into Keith, so we'll probably talk about it more next, but like the fact that he puts his head down is just like not deterred. And he's like, I'm going to try.
yeah.
The willingness to fail, the willingness to put yourself out there, the willingness to see just how good you can be, even if it means sometimes you cross the line into an area where you're like, oh, I'm not that good, or I'm not that good yet. You're never going to know if you don't find out. And this was a season to find that kind of stuff out. And Denny found out. And that might have even pushed his ceiling higher than what we all thought it was coming into the year.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point too. I talked to Jordan Poole and Denny, man, and you get that vibe from them where they take the words of, a lot of the critics in the media, especially, sports media, and they use it as ammo. I know that, a couple of times I talked to Jordan early in the season, I talked to him, and he kind of had a look on his face like he watched my shows. And, he knew he got a little bit of smoke, man, but he's the kind of guy where he knows there's things he needs to work on. He's got an old soul to him. He'll be one of the first people to tell you. And Denny, the same thing. Denny takes a lot of criticism as fuel. And I'm really high on both of them, man, because I definitely think that both of them are part of the foundation going forward because we're going to the year 2 of a rebuild. So a very important component of a rebuild, head coach. So we're going to talk about that next. Is Brian Keefe the guy, or do we need to aim high for Mike Budenholzer? So before we talk about that, tonight's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. So as you guys know, I am an Iraq War vet, so I've had my fair share of things to talk about. But every so often we all need to talk to somebody, right? So sometimes we all need opportunity to get something off our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get at you. It's important to let that out, especially as someone who's unbiased on your life. So today I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking about the same thing this week, which is the economy. It's getting hard out here to pay bills, to get food. So there's something that we all can definitely relate on, right? Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team. And it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Are you watching Fox Sports ESPN on your TV all day long? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. So let's get back into it. Brian Keefe taking over from interim head coach this season from Weston Sale Jr., where they say Weston Sale Jr. was promoted. One heck of a promotion, but there's a whole other topic. But
I want that promotion. Hey,
man,
just if we want your opinion, we'll call you, but your check doesn't change.
I know, man. I mean, that's not a bad promotion. I'm just saying, but I mean, looking at Brian Keefe, he came in, like you said, taking over for Brian or Wes Unseld Jr. His name is synonymous with the organization through his dad. So I think that had a lot to do with them, quote unquote, promoting him. But, it's another topic. But look at Brian Keefe. He got a lot out of this team. If you look at the areas where this team struggled, rebounding, we were one of the worst, if not the worst team in the league. Defense, we struggled in every aspect of defense, whether it was transition defense, interior defense, perimeter, communication, everything. So you saw a big difference when him coming over into head coach. So right now, as it stands, is he the favorite to land a job? Or if you're in the front office, do you still throw money at a Mike Budenholzer or try to go talk to Darvin Ham?
Yeah, there's a couple guys that I would look at that are out there. Like I would want Brian Keefe to be a candidate because Brian Keefe fits the archetype of one of the successful coaching models in the NBA right now, which is like the lead assistant who is ready, right? And Nick Nurse was like this in Toronto. They they fired Dwayne Casey, they move him up, and now Nick Nurse is considered maybe the best coach in the NBA. Mark Daigneault, this was Bud back when he left San Antonio and went to Atlanta. And so there's definitely, I don't know who those names are. I obviously doing the football stuff and being a bit of a generalist as a talk show host, I'm not as locked in on who the lead assistants are around the league, but I can tell you what teams I'd want to look at based off the records, based off who I think are good coaches. And I'm like, I want the good coach's best sidekick, right? I'd look at Philly's staff and who Nurse has. I would certainly look at Oklahoma City and be like, all right, who's next in that organization? So there are definitely, and obviously, Winger and Dawkins know that place very well. So I would want to look at those places. But I also think there is something to Bud specifically, who has won 60 games everywhere he's been. Like, clearly that dude knows how to win. And I think the weakness for Bud, if such a thing exists, is like in the playoffs, he's made some questionable rotation and strategic decisions, not always adapted fast enough. Wizards don't have to worry about that for a while. If we have to worry about Bud's playoff coaching, then something has gone tremendously right. Sign me up for that yesterday. So I think Bud is an interesting one. Ham, hearing the stuff out of LA, and the Lakers are a weird organization in every conceivable way, but I don't know that he's as intriguing for me. Bud is definitely intriguing. Oh God, there's another guy I was thinking about of the veterans, but like, the veterans who know a level, know how to establish it, know how to establish a culture. The only other thing that I'd be worried about with a guy like that, though, if they don't have a previous relationship with Winger and Dawkins, is do you get any front office coaching staff friction? And I think that some of the younger guys or some of the guys who are, if Keefe already understands the working relationship here, like Will and Michael are in charge. And you have to be okay with that as a head coach. And if you bring in a bigger personality as a head coach and someone with more experience, that could cause friction at some point.
No, that's a great point, man. If you look at the working relationship that Brian Keefe already has with the front office, I think that to a certain degree gives him a leg up, because to me, just the reaction he got from his team, we both heard from, the exit interviews that this locker room believes in Brian Keefe. He got a lot out of these players, man. He got a lot of accolades from people like Kevin Durant. He said he owes a lot to his game to Brian Keefe. And if you look at another guy on the staff, David Vanderpool, he's another guy that should definitely get an interview, in my opinion. So I think that Brian Keefe and David Vanderpool at least, deserve an interview. But you still got to do your due diligence. Still reach out to Mike Budenholzer, because I'm with you. Mike Budenholzer would be a really good hire because, again, he's shown what he can do in Atlanta, in Milwaukee. Now, like you said, in the playoffs, he's had questionable rotations. But right now, playoffs aren't even an issue, right? That's not even a dream for the Wizards. So, we definitely have time to kind of build his roster up. But those are really good points about the working relationship. And Brian Keefe, to me, like I said, he at least gets an interview. But that's the reaction that the roster gave him, I think says a lot. So
yeah, it's just the thing is with interims, like it's so hard because you're the interim, right?
Yeah,
and like once you're the guy, it can be great. Some interims have taken off and been like, no, that was the right guy all along. And then sometimes it's like, oh no, it was a bit of a substitute teacher thing where, you had it wasn't the sub that rolled in the TV cart back in the day, and just like didn't care. Like this was the sub that came in and you're like, oh, we got to be more serious when the real teacher's here. Like we sit up a little straighter in our seats. This teacher's here to teach. And so does that work over a longer period of time? And I just don't know Brian Keefe well enough to really have that feel. And nor do I know people that know him well enough. He's obviously a tremendous assistant. And what you have in terms of an assistant coach, like the responsibilities are just very, very different than a head coach. The ability to develop a player, to work with them, not that you can't. Like Spoelstra stayed D-Wade's guy long after he got the head coaching job, right? So like you can take elements of that. And I think it's really important. I know we joked about not doing Commanders off the top, but like in football, if Kyle Shanahan wasn't still the offensive coordinator, that'd be a really stupid thing for the San Francisco 49ers. He's really good at it. So whatever Brian Keefe's superpower is, I want him to hire a staff if he gets the job that allows him to keep doing that. If he's Bilal Koulibaly's guy, I want him to keep working with Bilal. Like that I want that growth trajectory to still happen. But there's an executive, like CEO, high level, time management, personality management, all that part of the job that you have to do as a head coach that you don't as an assistant. And I want the person who's going to manage that stuff the best because, as stated, the most important thing that they're doing here, besides collecting talent, is building a culture and a set of standards. And you have to be able to enforce that on a macro level as a head coach. And if Brian Keefe is the best guy to do that, give him the job. And I think Will and Michael would know that at this point. And if not, then go find someone who can do that. And obviously, we talk about Bud. The the San Antonio and the Oklahoma City trees are the same tree, right? What's his name? Presti came from San Antonio back in the day, and that's obviously where Bud comes from. So like, I have no doubt that they would be able to coexist. But that is the kind of thing that I'm like in terms of characteristics. That's what I'm looking at.
No, I agree 100%. I think the two biggest areas that need to be shored up is one, scouting and development. I mean, we're going to year 2 of a rebuild. Scouting and development, we have to hit in the draft, which under Ernie Grunfeld and Tommy Shepard, which not so much on Tommy Shepard, and I'm going to explain my case next, but Ernie Grunfeld, he missed all the time. I mean, Vesely just makes, I still shake my head at that one. So scouting and development has to be key. We have to hit through the draft because they mentioned that they do want DC to be a destination for free agents, but we have to have that foundation, which is scouting and development, have that young foundation. And you already hit the nail on the head, which is culture, which is a standard, setting a standard. The culture is very important in a young team because, we saw in the second half of the season where, in the first half under West, very often than not, 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, we're already waving the white flag, where opposed to under Brian Keefe, we're playing good teams hard and we're playing to win. That's the right culture that you want in play. So I think they're definitely doing that. So, I'm a Brian Keefe guy. I think that he definitely, to me, this is my opinion, he gets a leg up, but you still do your due diligence and go out there and aim high for Bud. You definitely still throw something because money talks. So you need the right number, man. Bud might talk to us. So we'll see, man. So we're going to kind of fast forward to the draft. The draft is getting there, man. It's in June, but we're kind of ramping up. So we're going to answer the question, should we draft for fit in the future or best player available? But before we do, tonight's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. Now, when you think of DoorDash, you think of what? Food delivery, but they do so much more. And Mother's Day is right around the corner. So this Mother's Day, get something thoughtful from mom on DoorDash. Surprise her from whatever you are with fresh bouquets, the latest tech, gift cards, self-care treats, and more to make her day that much better. Does mom have a sweet tooth? Is she a tech enthusiast, a beauty connoisseur, or is she outdoorsy? No matter what she's into, you can make her smile with a fruit or flower bouquet, makeup, tech gear, workout wear, and more. So look, get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place, y'all, and get 50% off your next order, up to $15 off when you spend $15 plus on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order. Now with promo code Locked On NBA, that is Locked On NBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. DoorDash. So, like I said, the draft is coming up, and obviously it's in June, and we're, right now as a Wizard, we're covering the Wizards, so it's our off season, but the NBA players are still going on. But looking at the draft, a lot of experts are kind of down on this draft, saying, and I see, where they're coming from. There's very little guys in this draft class that are going to be able to come right, in and start right away and contribute right away. So it's a highly developmental draft. So, if you're the Wizards front office, are you looking at future fit or are you looking at best player available?
So this is the easiest question you're going to ask me because I can answer the question with a question. What is this draft pick fitting with? Because can you guarantee anybody besides Bilal Coulibaly being on this roster a year from now?
Yeah.
No. Like either every good player has value and could be traded, or they're not good and thus they are not going to be around. So I think Corey Kispert could be a part of the Wizards for hopefully a decade. Yes, I love Corey Kispert. I love everything he's about. I love everything he's for. I love how his game has come together. But that means that so do other teams and other people. And if ultimately the timeline is determined that Corey Kispert is more useful for the Washington Wizards being turned into draft picks or other younger players, then you flip Corey Kispert. Same with Kuz, same with Poole, same with all these guys who I think are good players. And this does get to, I think, a larger point here, which is I think a lot of the Wizards Twitter online discourse, sorry to be very online here, but a lot of the discourse is extremely short-sighted in a way that blows my mind. And in a way, I get it, right? This team has been so mediocre, or like mediocrity has been the ceiling. It's been mediocre to bad for so long that telling people to be patient is a non-starter. Fans are like, no, we want to win now. And so they're very focused on what does this mean for 2024? And the answer, or the thing that really we should be looking at is what does it mean for 26, 27? What does it mean for 2028 when hopefully Bilal is entering his prime as the older guy on this team in terms of the core, and they're starting to really make a run in Eastern Conference Finals and then hopefully follow that up with some NBA Finals appearance. That's the timeline that we're talking about here. And so with that, the obvious answer is best player available. The roster is going to turn over too much to try to worry about fit, and especially fit for 2024. And I realize that's frustrating because you make moves such as having Tyus Jones and Jordan Poole together, which if you're trying to win basketball games right now is an asininely stupid thing to do. But having them both as assets is not asininely stupid. And so while, yes, I think there's a different discussion to be had about how Tyus has been managed by not flipping him at the deadline. And if he walks out the door for nothing, like it's really hard to make hey, we were about to lose Kristaps Porzingis for nothing. So we made this trade with, Memphis. And then literally the guy you got back from Memphis, you let walk for nothing a year later. Like, what are we doing there? So like, it's not a very coherent argument. It doesn't mean the first trade was a bad idea, but like, yes, they might have mismanaged this thing here. But point is, that causing problems in 2024 doesn't matter to me. That's a neutral to me. Who cares? It's 2024. This was year 0 of the rebuild. And so when we talk about spinning it forward, it's about getting the best basketball players possible. And 3 years, not that you don't worry about how they fit together if you're talking about the young players. Like, do I want, and I guess Bilal's, now I feel like I'm rambling, sorry, but like Bilal is the type of player that you want multiples of. So it's like, if he's the only guy that's a pillar, he's the only one that's not moving, you can literally draft anybody. But if you had like a center in-house already, sure, I wouldn't double up there. But because Bilal is a flexible wing player and you typically want 2 of those at least on the floor at any given time, I think you literally have the license in the 2024 NBA draft to go wherever you want and whoever you think is the best basketball player.
No, you bring a good point about the general, lack of patience. And that's the thing about, DC as far as Wizards fans, really just DC sports fans, period, is that, and I kind of mentioned this in previous episodes of my show, man, is that, people don't know how to be patient because we've never been through a proper rebuild. I mean, Ernie Grunfeld missed almost every pick, and then the picks he hit were so obvious. I mean, with John Wall at number 1, I mean, where else are you going to go? And then same thing with Bradley Beal. I mean, you go Bradley Beal there, so he doesn't get much credit for that. And then with Tommy Shepard, I'm not going to call his draft picks bad. They were bad for the roster construction because we need the guys to come in and be able to be a supporting cast for, John Wall or Bradley Beal, and we were drafting guys that needed to be developed. Like Denny needed to be developed. And so you're starting to see pay dirt when it comes to his offensive side, but Corey had to be developed. Johnny Davis still needs to be developed. Yeah. So the list goes on. He drafted.
And they also just didn't have the infrastructure to actually develop guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another great point too. And that's why I said that with this new regime and this new direction and the new era, scouting and development has to be key because we are going into year 2 of a rebuild. That has got to be the most important part of this organization right now, scouting and development, because we have to hit these draft picks and not only hit the ones we're supposed to hit, we got to find the jewels in the rough in the later first round, in the second round, because this was the first time in a while with Tristan Vucevic where we actually saw a second round pick play. I mean, Yannick Zosa, I don't even know where the guy's at. We need to put an APB out on him because he's missing, man. So
100%.
We finally got a second round pick who came in and played. He came in late, but he showed that he can play some basketball. Now, defensively, his lateral defensive movement needs to get better, stuff like that. He shows glimpses of being a rim protector, but his offensive side, man, he came in and, he hit the ground running offensively, in my opinion. So,
totally. I think this is what Will's great at, right? Like Will is great at understanding like what actually works. And there's, I've spent the last 4+ months just so engrossed in the NFL draft. And I've thought more about player development and player scouting in the last 4 months than I ever have in my life. And I'm someone who thinks about that type of stuff a lot. Like I also have a fitness coaching like background and, side of my life. Like I think about coaching and like developing and growing people in an athletic sense a lot, but I've never thought about it more than the last 4 months with the Commanders having the number 2 pick and such an instrumental part in their franchise's history, which I talk about every day on the radio. And so thinking about some of the things that I've learned and like really kind of cemented in my mind and applying those things to the Wizards is really, really interesting. But one of the big things that, and also I've been really lucky, I guess as a DC sports commentator to have Winger and Dawkins come in, but also Adam Peters to come in as the general manager of the Commanders, who's considered maybe the best talent evaluator in the NFL. And so hearing these guys who are very good at this talk about scouting and talk about development has really solidified a lot of ideas. And one of them is like, what can you do? Right. And so much of scouting is like, well, this guy can't do that. Well, he can't do that. And it's like, okay, well, what can he do? And does that thing work in the league? And whether it's the NFL, like this guy can throw this route tree, or this guy can run this way, or in the NBA, like this guy can shoot. Okay, cool. Like we can work on other stuff. He can shoot. Hallelujah. Sign me up. And what does that mean for his career development? Like, can he be on the floor immediately because he can defend? Can he be on the floor immediately because he can shoot? And that buys us some time to get him some minutes and get him some experience? Or does that he can jump and he can move, but he's not a very good basketball player. And so that we think that he has the raw materials to be created into something, but we need to be able to actually give him the time to do it in the G League or with coaching or whatever it may be. So like understanding what it is you're looking for, having a clear vision of the non-negotiables. This guy's got to be able to do X number of basketball things. He's got to have the right mentality, the right makeup, the right whatever. And then also what can he do? And are those things that we can work on? That clarity is everything. And I think Dawkins is really good at it as a scout and now as a general manager. And then that feeds into you draft a guy, you have a plan for him, and that actually allows that player to become the best version of himself.
Hey, man, I agree 100%. So before we roll out, man, we're going to talk a little about the Commanders a little bit, left tackle. Now, in the draft, I know everybody had their own expectations where left tackle should have came in. I will admit, when we went ahead and drafted Newton, I was like, oh, man, because I was expecting left tackle. So I'm with you, man. I was actually yelling at the TV. But I do like Newton. I will be honest. I do like Newton. I see the first round value. I see him as an eventual replacement for Jonathan Allen after this season. But in looking at left tackle, do you see us signing a guy, trading for a guy, or you think we're set or we're rolling in with what we got?
I think what they'll do is they'll have Brandon Coleman, their third round pick, who the more I read about, the more I'm like, that guy, why wasn't that guy ranked with all the other dudes that we talked about potentially being on the board at 36? Like, I really like Brandon Coleman. I love his story. We talk about like, where does he come from? What kind of makeup does he have? It's a military kid who grew up mostly in Germany, moved to Texas when his junior year of high school, playing basketball, was like, I don't know, I'm kind of big. Like, maybe I should try football. And sure enough, he eventually winds up on the offensive line, goes to a JUCO. And then a couple years later, he's starting at left tackle in the national title game for TCU. Like, it's a pretty good story. Pretty good. One of the things that Peters likes a lot is like, did someone have to earn it? And Brandon Coleman has had to earn it. And so I think they give him a shot in the spring. If it goes well, sweet, you found your left tackle. If it goes poorly, then you go sign someone over the summer, and whether it's a vet. I mean, Cornelius Lucas and Trent Scott will have a chance to compete for that spot too. But I definitely think that it's something where people have to remember that 1,000 players get cut at the end of August, or September. Like, cut down day, rosters go from 90 to 53. And it goes from about 2,000, like 2,100 NFL players on 90-man rosters to just over 1,000 on 53-man rosters. And somewhere in that 1,000-plus players that becomes available will be a veteran left tackle that could start next week for you. And so I think if they get through training camp and there's not a clear answer, then there's definitely a chance they either sign someone who's currently available or they wait for that cutdown day. But I do think that they'll give Brandon Coleman a chance, and I think he's got a chance to be successful as a rookie. If it takes 6 weeks, Cornelius Lucas can start 6 weeks, and you'll be okay with that.
Yeah, I agree on Brandon Coleman. I kind of had to warm up to him and study and do some tape on him. And I think he could definitely play. He needs the development, but I think he could play. Now, I think this year's going to be kind of an evaluation year. Can he be that left tackle? Can he slide the right tackle if we need to go out and get a left tackle? They said he could be a guard. So Cosme to me is set in right guard, unless they want to move him, because Wiley I don't have too much confidence in Wiley, man. So, it's definitely
more confidence in the play caller this year. When you got Andrew Wiley is a perfectly average NFL tackle. This is what I try to tell people. It's a matter of sample sizes. He's a perfectly average NFL tackle, which means that if you ask him to do something that like you need to be an elite right tackle to do, he's going to look awful. And that's what Eric Bieniemy, a guy who had coached him before, did last year.
Yeah, I know.
Way overexposed. Not his fault.
Oh, man, way overexposed, man. But that's a whole nother conversation we're going to have about Eric Bieniemy, man. So, again, hey, man, we're going to go ahead and call it. But appreciate your time. Appreciate coming on the show, man. Before we roll, man, you got anything you want to plug real quick?
The Hoffman Show, we'll be definitely doing a lot of Wizards talk all off season long. Hopefully doing some Mystics as well. We've got a bunch of great interviews. If anyone is a Mystics fan, on our YouTube page, at Craig Hoffman. A lot of them are right now behind our instant access paywall, but they will be becoming public if you don't want to spend the $199 a month to be able to watch them immediately. Honestly, I think they're kind of worth it. It was 8 amazing interviews from Media Day. And those are up right now on YouTube at Craig Hoffman. And then other than that, we'll see you 4 to 7 daily on the Team 980. That show streams on YouTube as well, at the Team 980. So no matter where you are and how you want to listen or watch, we're there for you.
Absolutely. I definitely recommend y'all because Craig knows what he's talking about. So definitely recommend, man. So again, appreciate you coming on, man. So we'll go ahead and roll. And I guess real quick, I got one more final question because I got to hit you up before we with the roster right now for the Commanders, what's your over and under for wins?
7.5 is, I would say, is
7.5?
the over under. Yeah, I think they're gonna be somewhere in the like 6 to 9 range.
Okay. I can dig it. Okay, got you. All right, man. Well, again, appreciate you coming on, man. And we'll catch you guys next time. Hail to the Wizards and peace. See you guys next time.